Hey, hi, what's going on, folks? We are here live from the Hockey Buzz Studios
some of us
in North Wales, in Montreal, in South Jersey, in Cheektowaga, and in Ann Arbor, and we are in those areas abouts. Yes, we are going to talk today about a hockey game that took place last night between two of relatively famous teams, two teams that basically invented the sport of hockey. But first, Russ has something to say, and then we're going to move on from there. Russ, what do you have to say about yourself?
Quick baseball point. I saw a graphic yesterday. Even I had been wondering, how are the New York Mets winning so many games when they have 12 to 15 guys on the injured list? They can't hit the ball, but they can pitch. But why is their pitching so good, and how are they actually winning games? And they came out with a graphic yesterday. Back in the day in the 60s, Kevin would probably remember this. Rube Walker was like the Mets pitching coach. And that's the first pitching coach I really realized there's a big deal about pitching coaches. And he invented the 5-man rotation. That sort of changed the game for a while. Well, it looks like Jeremy Hefner now is changing the game too, because with the two-seam fastball, he has everybody's pitches breaking later than anybody else in the league. So they're breaking late over the plate. And they have a graphic, and it shows in some cases it looks like it's almost 2 feet. So making the plate shorter. So this could be a reason, Kevin, why Manfred's looking to extend the mound. And the issue is the Mets have the top 4 pitchers in the league with two-seam fastballs and their break. And so you know what? For people who say, pitching coaches, batting coaches, bench coaches, they don't matter. When you back it up with stats and graphs, they do.
But the one thing I would want to add about this baseball, and I'm as we all know, we talk about this all the time. I'm not a big conspiracy theory person, but there's no denying that they've altered the ball a little bit. And
Yes.
I know Mike and Russ, you guys watch a lot of baseball like I do, and I wonder if you've noticed how many foul outs we've seen with the new baseball. How many times?
A lot of them. You're right.
You've seen more than you usually see. Like so many guys now
you said it, but you're right.
Have foul out behind, like to the catcher. We've seen a lot of them with the third baseman coming in and, catching in foul territory. The first baseman, there's been a lot of more pop-ups in the infield that I've seen.
Definitely been a ton of those.
Yeah, so I think the ball really has had an impact.
Yeah, the spin rate.
And you know what? Honestly, I think, and I'm being slightly facetious here, but I think the New York Yankees should sue Rob Manfred, because when you have a team that is aimed towards hitting home runs and then you change the ball to basically deaden the game and have less home runs, I mean, I think that Major League Baseball has a responsibility to the teams to let them know what they're doing before they go out and build these teams in a particular way. If we're going to go back to 1968 and Denny McLain and Bob Gibson, I'm all fine with that because I love pitching. But, I think the teams that have, Judge and Stanton and Sanchez and all these home run guys, they're at a disadvantage because half of them are hitting under the Mendoza line. So
nobody feels bad for the Yankees, Mike.
Of course.
Move on.
Just like nobody feels bad.
That a miniature Conn Smythe?
Yep.
Wow. Where did you get that at? That's so cool.
Isn't that cool or what?
That's a McDonald's one, right?
That's as close as the Leafs will get to
the
final this year.
I got this too. Check this out.
I think those are McDonald's ones.
Yeah, McDonald's in Canada. Like that. Yeah. How cool is McDonald's in Canada? Like, why?
I know, they get all the good stuff.
How do we not want to live in Canada? As
Fun Meals or what?
Yes, Happy Meals.
I think they didn't come with Happy Meals.
No, you have to buy them on the side, pretty much like the little hockey sticks with Tim Hortons this year.
They have the hockey sticks too. But their new hockey stick Tim Hortons hockey sticks are back right now, right? Because I saw that advertised the other day on the CBC.
Did you actually get them at the McDonald's, or did you just buy them on?
No,
eBay?
I got them on eBay. Because they come with a really cool platform and everything like that, and they I think they're amazing. Like when I was a kid, I would have killed for this. Like this is just like I remember having my rod hockey games, my rod hockey tournaments with
based on the sharpness on top, you could have killed somebody with that.
That's
how much were they?
Wasn't much. It was like $60 for the whole set of them on eBay, which I thought was pretty reasonable. There's
calling them Happy Meals. That's pretty good.
I think there's 5 of them all together. The others are behind that picture. I'll bring them. I'll show another time. I'll bring them all out. But yeah, they're 5 of them all together, and this, including a little miniature Stanley Cup. So that and it comes with a platform to put them on too.
Yeah, that mini cup. If you could only win the mini cup.
But that Conn Smythe is as close as the Leafs will get to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I mean they put a maple leaf on the Conn Smythe just to tease you, Mike. Yeah. Okay, so that's why that's there, right? All right, here we go. Let's start because my God. All right.
The intro.
What a great intro. That was an excellent intro. Let's start because my God.
Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday. It's June. It's June 1st, 2021.
I'm Michael Lagello, and since it's June, the Leafs are obviously not playing.
I'm Kerry Nice, and for once, the Abs are playing in June.
Just coming from Sportsology.
Not long.
I'm Kevin Allen of Hockey Buzz.
I'm Eklund, and this is going to be a fun one. I can tell already. We're going to have to keep Karen and Michael from killing each other today.
Put their boxes on top of each other, Mike.
I wish I could. I got to rearrange you guys. How can I do that? Can you do that? Here we go. All right, hold on. I'm going to put you guys here. I've going down here. Now, you guys be nice to each other down there.
I like that.
I like it.
All right, be friendly. Be friendly. Be friendly. All right, but there's all good friends here. You guys work for the same team. You're all Hockey Buzz people. All right, here we go. Yeah. Okay, so what's up? Anything new? Last night, there was a game. That's what I texted Kareen right after the game, right, Kareen? I texted right after the. Now, can I ask you a favor? Is it Karen or Kareen? I've got mixed up for this.
Well, it's Karen, but you're not French, so you can pronounce it however you want. As long as it's not Karen.
It's not Karen. So the way I pronounce it okay in Korean?
Yes, fun. Yeah.
Korean. Okay, cool. Korean, more like that, right? Korean. Okay, cool. Sorry, I appreciate it. So, so I texted after the game last night. I texted Korean. Sorry, I texted you right away.
Let me ask.
So what's new? That was my text. It just said, "What's new?" Just because. Hey, go ahead, Mike.
You texted her when they were up 2-0 to curse her.
No, that's not something you do. That's not,
Well, he did to me 8 years ago.
I know, but to be fair now, okay, a long time ago.
I was pulling for you though, Mike. We talked about this yesterday.
And last year, this is true. Okay, man, my phone. Sorry, my phone's going nuts. Last year during the Pittsburgh series with Montreal, I did text Corinne in the middle of the series. And then they won, and the Canadiens won. So it was perfectly fine. It's just, so I'm not always a jinx, all right? I'm not always a jinx in the middle of a game.
Well, not for me anyway. But, Mike, to be fair, your Leafs don't need jinxing. They do it themselves. Sorry.
All right, 1 second. So here, man, my daughter just going nuts on something I got. Okay, we're done. All right, so last night, this is going to be an interesting show because we have, obviously, Russ, Kevin, and I are here to just keep these two from killing each other. But Mike,
I have nothing against.
Mike is. It almost happened. Almost started before the show even. So, Mike, your thoughts on this? Just start us off. Obviously you're not thrilled about it, but
okay. I mean, I'll let me because I did a talk show on Twitter Spaces after the game. Sort of a catharsis of 2.5 hours of just. Leaf fans venting their spleen. And, the thing is that, I mean, of course, their reaction is this team is gutless. They're a bunch of losers. They're pissed off. I think they're pissed off at everybody, including management, including the coaching staff. Manny Malhotra is responsible for the bad power play. Kyle Dubas is more focused on analytics. The whole cap.
You should blame this all on Manny Malhotra. I'm 100%.
Yeah, we'll take him for the face-off training.
Right, but this is the core of it. We cannot ignore that the injury to Tavares and the injury to Muzzin were factors.
Sure.
No doubt. The Leafs, even without their best, their team captain, and they're probably their most dependable two-way defenseman, were more talented than the Montreal Canadiens. That doesn't mean anything if you're more talented if you don't put that into action. Montreal worked harder. They got. I think Jack Campbell was just as good as Carey Price, but Carey Price was better in the right spots.
I do not agree.
Jack Campbell allowed a crushing goal in the second period to Brendan Gallagher on a 5-hole, and it is always when you allow goals at certain points in the game, and that was a crusher. Overall in the series, I think Jack Campbell was great in Game 6, was great in 3 of the 4 games that the Leafs won 3 of the first 4, but he didn't come up big in that part. The whole thing, though, and I'm not dumping all the responsibility on them, but when you have players who are secondary players like Nylander, like Kerfoot, like Spezza, who all step up, that's all fine and good. But the difference between victory and defeat is them stepping up and their core players performing the way they were expected to. And Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner did not show up for 6 of the 7 games. And that, especially when you're paying them $11 million a year, is inexcusable.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that, we're going to get Kevin's thought on this for a second, because the thought I had here was, first of all, Marner last night looked very, very, very lost. Like that's the most lost I've seen a player. I mean, that you can blame Campbell. And first of all, just let's say this one thing: Price walks into a room and he's better than anybody else. Okay, he doesn't even have to be on the. He doesn't have to be on the. In that kind of situation last night, he's more dangerous.
Price.
Playoff price. Right. In that situation last night,
playoffs price.
His presence is more than Campbell can be at all. Like, and no almost anybody can be. And the reality is that presence, like, you can say he's not playing at top of his game, you can say it's whatever, but his existence, it's just mere existence back there is threatening to anybody. That's not a shot at Toronto. That's not a shot at anybody. If Price is in the zone, the second you fall behind on Carey Price by a goal, you're behind by a goal on Carey Price in your head. That's what's going on. You're not just behind by a goal, you're behind by a goal on Carey Price.
Yeah, I think in the overtime game, Price definitely got in Marner's head with that save that he stretched out at the post.
But Marner, that Gallagher goal, flatly to me goes on Marner and not Campbell.
Yes, well, that's what I was going to say. Let me finish. Marner didn't have good puck security on that, so Stahl knocked it away. Anybody would have knocked it away. I mean, there's so many active sticks now in the NHL that you carry the puck like that, you're susceptible. There was that. Yeah. But there was a play along the wall at like 12 minutes to go in the game where I felt like if Toronto could have gotten the puck, they had a clear shot to the net, and Marner backed off after a little bit of contact. And I was like, I could see this. He didn't look good on the bench. I could tell the pressure was getting to him. And at that point, he was disengaging.
It was. And this is the one thing I want to say. And then like for Kevin, and then on to Karen, and then back to Mike. So here we go. Kevin and I, you and I have had this discussion in many of the Stanley Cup final, Kevin, over the years in our many, many lunches that we've had about the fact that do you blame the team for losing or do you credit the team for winning? Right. This is the oldest story in the book, right? What are your thoughts on this last night? Where do you fall on this game last night?
Well, I do blame the Maple Leafs for losing. I think they had a much better team, but as always the case in this situation, it's never one thing. It's a combination of factors. But saying that, I disagree. Like, we have to blame Marner and Matthews for the lack of offensive production, and especially in comparison to look at Nathan McKinnon and what he's doing for Colorado.
Right.
You have so many of these stars that are already been eliminated, and we've had Matthews and Marner that just didn't do anything what they needed to do. Meanwhile, you got Nathan McKinnon with 8 goals in 5 games, doing what he's supposed to do as the leader of that team. So, number one, I'm going to blame those guys. But that goal that Campbell gave up was, and someone used the word crushing. I don't know if it was Mike, maybe it was, but that was a crushing goal. Yeah. And, I agree with Mike that he played well, but, you could just feel the team deflate. Like when he had a clear vision of that shot, and that wasn't a sizzling shot.
No.
That was just a normal, regular shot. And it just went right through his legs in the biggest game of Campbell's career. And, so that's another major factor that you've got to play into it. I think you do have to blame the injuries. You have to blame the Muzzin injury and the Tavares injury for that series. I mean, those are significant players that are lost, particularly the leadership aspect of Tavares. But I also think you have to give credit to Montreal for working hard.
Yeah.
Like, every game I watched them play, they didn't act like a team that expected to lose that series. They acted like a team that expected to win. And I also think that the factor of the heaviness of the drought, everybody knows in Toronto that they haven't won big games, 17 years without winning a first round. That weighs on you, even if you played no part in what happened in 2004. So I think it was a combination of factors. I would say the most significant in my mind were for the entire series, the lack of offensive production from guys that are supposed to produce, and then the game 7 just horrendous goal that Campbell gave up. I saw that and I thought Montreal's going to win this game. I don't think they're going to recover from that.
I don't know, Corinne. Mike has explained why he thinks Toronto lost this game. I want you to make the argument as to why you think Montreal won this game or this series in general.
I'm going to start by saying that I agree with Mike that the goal was deflating. However, the Leafs were ready to be deflated. It was just clear as day that as soon as it was not going to go their way, they weren't going to come back. It's sad, and well, for you obviously, but you can't just put it all on your goaltender. And I think Toronto has a tendency to, when they do their post-mortem, they just focus on themselves. They don't look around. They're just checking their own belly button and being like, oh, Matthews and Marner did nothing. Well, they did nothing, but Price did something. Philip Danault did something. Jake Evans did something.
Evans was great.
Yeah.
Evans was lights out, seriously.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, yes, you can blame the injury, but you also have to give credit to your opponents. I mean, the fact that Matthews and Marner didn't produce in this series doesn't mean that they're rotten players and oh my God, they are so bad. I mean, this is the same fan base that always wants to trade William Nylander, who, lo and behold, was their best player in the series, points-wise.
And
they
may trade him still, but
right.
So but that's the thing. I think yes, Montreal won, but it was helped by Toronto's lack of confidence, and also if injuries actually hurt the Leafs, they helped the Canadiens, believe it or not, because Kotkaniemi came in the second game after Jake Evans went down to injury.
Yeah,
Cole Caulfield came in the third game when Lehkonen went down to injury. So that was like, thank God, the whole fan base was like, yes, we're going to see the kids.
That is the craziest thing about
it is true. It should have been in all along,
yeah.
And that is the only reason they got in, so it's a great point.
It's absolutely wonderful. I'm just wondering now who needs to get hurt so that Romanov gets in the lineup.
I know, right?
We'll get back to that eventually.
Like Kulak.
But the point...
Yeah.
Well, I like Kulak. I like Kulak. More than Gustafsson, I'll say that. But that's the thing with the Habs. They've been lucky because the coach, I'm sorry, he did win the series. He did fairly well. But yesterday, if he didn't play Kulak and Gustafsson a bit more than he did the game before, they wouldn't have won that. They would have been so dead because Shea Weber played 37 minutes in Game 6, and that was just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the guy is slowing down. He's getting older, and that's normal. So you can't make him play like a first pairing D, put him on the PK, on the PP, on everything, and just expect that he'll be fine. He's just, he's got some stuff left in the tank, but he's older, and they need to realize that. You can't run 4Ds and just expect it's going to work when you've got those particular 4Ds. I mean, I know Chicago did it in 2013, 14, I can't remember. But, their decor was like 32 years old. No, 36.
So it also was much better decor that Chicago had then. There's no way
exactly.
about it.
So,
I mean,
it worked against the Leafs fine. But it worked. It worked because the Leafs were, ready to be taken down, I think.
I think that is an interesting point because the contrast between the Leafs' nervousness and Price's calmness was drastic.
The nervousness last night was so very visible because Matthews had one chance to send, I think it was Nylander, off on a breakaway, and he completely missed that pass. It was just like,
what's funny? I do think the Canadiens had nervousness in the first period. I do, but I'm going to tell you the two least nervous guys. And sometimes it's good to be young and stupid, were Suzuki and Caulfield. They weren't nervous at all. They were actually trying to make plays when others were playing it safe. And I really appreciate that.
It was the most dreadful first period in a game 7 that I've seen in a long time, because it was like the guys were taking 2 strides, and it was stick check all over the place. And there was no flow. There was nothing. And I think that fed into Montreal's success, because they are a low event team. They want to play low event games because they don't have, really fantastic offense, and they have Carey Price. So once they get a 1-goal lead, they can sit on it, and that's really what happened. But I have to say, it's like, like Kevin was saying, the Leafs were not battling just Montreal. They were battling, and I'm just talking about this particular core group. They are 0 for 5 in the playoffs, losing in the first round. They are 0 for 7 in elimination games. They cannot do it, no matter how much talent there is. And Kyle Dubas, the last 3 years, has in the season-ending media availability, he has owned the responsibility. It's on me. I'm sorry. Like I'm the guy. He cannot get away with it this time. The media and the fans are saying, they're calling bullshit on this. They're saying, I'm sorry. This core group is proved it for 5 years in a row that they can't win. You can add the secondary players around them, but it's the core that needs to be changed. And I don't think he can get away with saying, no, we're just going to keep the same. If he keeps the same thing, if he doesn't make any changes and they lose in the first round again, then Shanahan and Dubas will be looking for jobs. That's why something will be changed. I don't know if it's Nylander or Marner, but something will happen this summer.
So this morning.
Welcome to Gray Tuesday.
Yes. So this morning, I get, the wild. I have all different kinds of rumor people that I listen to, right? And there's some people that are really out there, and there's some people that I'd listen to them, but I'll never report what they write. Sometimes they're right, but they're not. I can't verify it with other people, so I kind of stay away from it. I used to write more of those than I do now. Then there's people who I really trust, and then there's people who are absolutely 100% on, and some of the 100% on people I can't write. They won't let me write because they'll say, you can't talk about this yet or whatever. I try to avoid those people because I tell them that I don't want to do that. I don't want to not write, be stuck to not write something. However, the one that kept coming up today, among all levels of people, from the top people to crazy people, was Marner for Seth Jones. And I'm not saying there's anything to that at all. I'm just saying that this was something that everybody, and it's sort of an obvious thing to look to right away, because you can see Seth Jones's name's up there. This is what they could use in Toronto. Marner had just a horrible series. Kevin, thoughts on that kind of a trade?
Yeah, I don't see that happening, just because the difference, unless you were absolutely convinced that Seth Jones was going to sign with you, and I don't see him going to Toronto to play.
Yeah.
I see him going to Colorado or staying in the States. So
I don't think Columbus wants that kind of contract either.
No, they don't, and they're going to be very, very careful, because they traded for Lane and they got burned. I mean, they lost that trade big time, so I don't see them rushing to trade Seth Jones.
You're right. You're right on that, Kareem. But in terms of Marner and Columbus, Russ, I think they would be interested, because the money, after he's paid a signing bonus this year, he's being paid league minimum, but then the money for the last, I think, 3 years of the contract goes down to around $6 million. So it's a cap hit that's high, but the money is low. And that's even more prevalent with Nylander. His money is around $6 million, but 3.5 of that is signing bonus the last few years. So those contracts are movable. It's a question of, with the Leafs, is who you get back in those deals. And because Marner's cap hit is 10.9, I don't think you're getting as much back for Marner than you think, even though he's a top 5 scorer. Whereas Nylander, his cap hit is 6.9, his money is less than that, and he's coming off a good playoff. Some people in Toronto say, "Oh my God, you're trading the guy who scored the most goals in the playoffs." It's about what you get in return. You've got to change the chemistry of the core group, because all they've done, and you've seen this in other situations and other teams in other sports, if the core group keeps losing, then that losing invades their DNA, and you've got to shake that up. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to perpetuate.
You can really mess this up, Mike. I mean, they could really mess this up because they could. I mean, the reality is that they were 1 goal away from ending this in 5. You know, and that's something. So when you look at it that way, you're like, oh man, you know, we're gonna just go crazy here.
I told this to Russ this morning. The last 4 years, first series against Boston, they lose Kadri to suspension. Second year against Boston, they lose Kadri to suspension. Last year they lose Muzzin to injury. This year they lose Tavares and Muzzin to injury. It's it's almost like there's a cloud over their head. There's always excuses, but honestly, in 2 of those 4 series, they were the more talented team, and the talent didn't rise to the occasion.
Well,
it's not always about the talent, though. That's the problem. And the one thing I find that was a difficulty for the Leafs in this series as well was their supporting cast. You know, they went out and they got Joe Thornton and Wayne Simmons and Nick Foligno, who missed part of the series because he was injured. But Thornton and Simmons didn't do much. They seemed to be on their last legs.
And this is what
whereas Eric Stahl didn't do anything in the season for Montreal, but seemed to have elevated during the playoffs. And Corey Perry was good all the way through.
But this is what I warned Mike when they signed those guys, that when you're signing this older talent, there's a point when they look old, and they did. And Simmons was out there. One sec, Mike. Simmons was out there with 12 minutes to go on a shift, and just trying to get into the offensive zone was painful because he can't do that anymore. And that was a wasted shift, and they needed all the shifts they could get at the end of that game.
And as I said with the trade with Eric Stahl, when Eric Stahl was traded from Buffalo to Montreal, all that guy has done in his entire career is beat the hell out of the Leafs. And in this series, he did nothing during the regular season, and he factored in a couple key goals at a key time. You know, I agree. Simmons didn't live up to the expectations. After he broke his wrist, he was not the same player. Thornton was slow all year. I think Thornton's going to retire. I thought that guys like Bogosian, stabilized their bottom pairing. So some of the veterans did perform, but it wasn't about the supporting cast. I mean, guys like Mikheyev and
I think it is. I will bring Kevin into it with this. Yeah. Rather than loading up on those older guys, I was saying to Mike, Kevin, that I saw what the Rangers did with the 94 Rangers, and sometimes they made one too many trades, but they brought in as many winners as they could. Right, and I do think the Leafs need to bring in 2 or 3 guys with playoff success. You can bring in 1 star, right? If you want to trade Nylander for that 1 star that's got winning success, do that. And then the rest can be supporting cast. But if they have a history of winning, a lot of times they'll stop those things from happening and a tight locker room from happening. Kevin knows it from Detroit.
Mitch Marner for Anze Kopitar.
Do you think that helps?
I'm just joking.
That's an interesting thought about it, because I've been fascinated all season. Eck knows this about what Bill Zito did in Florida, because it's such a unique strategy in that he changed all of the role players and really altered the culture, in my opinion. Now, they didn't win the big series against Tampa Bay because I don't think they had the talent yet to match. But they were a much different team and much harder to play against by all those changes. And I have said that I really felt that's what Buffalo needs to do. Buffalo needs to wash out the bottom 10 players and trade all of them and bring in an entire new group and to change the culture.
And Kevin, it's like, support players are important. And when you've got like a younger player, and Russ and I talked about this before the deadline, they went out and got Nick Foligno, and Nick Foligno got hurt. And that's unfortunate, because I think if a healthy Nick Foligno would have had a much more.
Yeah, I just don't think he was ever fully healthy, even when they got him.
Russ, I think, like I said, I think he got hurt in like the 3rd game, and it's like Doug Gilmour stepping on the ice and getting hurt in his first shift when he was with Toronto back in 2004. It's just like the gods are against him. But I was advocating them going out and getting depth players who were younger, who could crash and bang against a team like Montreal, a guy like Lawson Krause from Arizona, somebody like that. And I think they need 2 or 3 of those players. This is the problem. Last year they traded Mason Marchment, who Kevin, for Bill Zito and the Florida Panthers was crashing and banging and making havoc with Tampa Bay. They got him for Dennis Malgin, who played about 10 games with the Leafs, did nothing, went to the Swiss League. Those are the type of trades you keep the Marchments, because those guys are valuable soldiers, whereas Dennis Malgin is a depth guy for the Toronto Marlies. That's a misstep for a guy like Kyle Dubas, who hasn't made many missteps. And I'm just curious of what they're going to do this summer. I think they're going to continue to bring in the veteran guys who are with character, but I think they need to get some young guys who will crash and bang, because they're just not enough. There's not enough sandpaper, not enough aggressiveness there to play playoff hockey if you're not going to get that from Marner and Matthews.
Now,
Can I just say, it's one thing to bring in veterans, but you got to pick the ones you're bringing in. The Leafs brought Thornton and Simmons. What have they won in the NHL? Not much.
Right, that's my point.
Say what you want about Bergevin, but this year he went out and got like 6 Stanley Cup winners.
Which is
good experience, because you're talking yourself, Mike, about the losing DNA of the Leafs.
But
give them some winners then.
But Corinne, the thing is, and Kevin, when they brought those guys in, they brought them in because they were hungry to win a Stanley Cup, and they figured, okay, Thornton hasn't won a cup, Simmons hasn't won a cup, they're coming here to win a cup. I think that motivation is just as much as somebody who has won a cup.
It can be.
Yeah, I think you got to get a variety. Like you can't just get. I mean, that's what Bill Zito's done in Florida. You look at the guys he brought in; it's a combination of things. Yeah, Vander Hagee was a skilled guy who didn't get an opportunity where he was. He got some guys who would crash and bang. He brought in Gudis to give the team more hitting. He just sort of addressed a variety of different issues, but he didn't do it with the core guys. He did it with the bottom 10, and what a difference it makes. So with Toronto, I thought it was a good try with Thornton. I would have brought Thornton in. He was still passing at a high level, and he could have done it. And as Mike said, he had hunger. He wanted to win. He saw that as an opportunity. I just think that was a miss, but I don't fault him for that one. But I think they had probably too many of those guys too. Simmons on the downward side.
Simmons had a big effect in like one game this year in Toronto. We remember talking about that, like a big fight that he had earlier when Toronto needed it. But Simmons just can't. He's a power play guy, and in a game like last night where there's no power plays, for the most part, there's just a couple power plays. He's kind of doesn't really much matter for you. It's not going to help you at all. I mean, now the other rumor, Kevin, is what it. And we have not heard yet that Dubas, has been officially green lighted and he's back, right? Like we know. I mean, no one said he's not back, but no one has come out and said they haven't made the statement yet that these are our guys.
They haven't had their season-ending media availability.
Right.
But Shanahan just signed a new long-term deal. Dubas is not getting fired, and Keefe is not getting fired. There may be changes in terms of the coaching staff, like Dave Hackstall or Manny Malhotra. To bring in other people that that's possible, because Hackstall was a holdover from Babcock's administration. Maybe I don't know about the assistant GMs or anything like that. Those but nobody big is going to get fired. But they are on a short leash now, because I think if they fail again next year, then I think everybody could be out. That's why I think the changes to the roster are going to happen.
Well, here the other name is Rutherford, right? And Rutherford's out there, right? And here's a great. I mean, he's the kind of guy who does build winners. And if he came into Toronto now, it's not that much different than when he came into Pittsburgh, basically. Pittsburgh was closer, and he helped. Kevin, what are your thoughts on Rutherford in Toronto?
Well, I think he would relish that for sure. But I've heard his name mentioned this week in both Arizona and as director of hockey operations and Buffalo. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that going around. But I think he would prefer to take a team that's closer, like Toronto, if it was. But saying all that, I agree with Mike. I don't see him making changes. I
don't think they will either. But and because they can use the pandemic as a year, as they can everyone's going to be able to use that.
Yeah.
That's like a common. But it makes me kind of nuts because everyone's using that as an excuse. It's like this is the pandemic year. But Tavares is, and those are significant injuries. Those are real excuses. I get that.
Yeah,
but the Toronto team is the kind of team that Rutherford likes.
yes.
Like you remember back when he took over that Pittsburgh team.
Yeah.
He changed a bunch of guys, and he just sort of changed the guys on the outside. Not as many as Bill Zito, but he changed a lot of them.
No, that's why I think he would be fantastic in this spot. Like I think if I was Toronto, I would seriously have to look at that right now.
Yeah,
because
but the problem here, Ak, is that if you bring Rutherford in, you're undercutting Dubas, and I don't think Shanahan would do that.
Is there anything wrong? I mean, listen. I mean, they handed Dubas, who's a very young guy, the keys to a very old franchise. And I'm not saying that. And listen, and I'm not cutting on Dubas on everything he's done. He's made some pretty decent trades. I will cut on Keith, and I agree with what Russ, you were texting me last night, that Keith really got out coached last night. And the one thing I will say that really just made me nuts. Okay. It was the journey of Sandin, like the defenseman in the series, right? Because it's like his journey was just coached horribly. Like it was to the point. So he missed. They scratch him for a game after he makes a big mistake, right? And that's like a Toronto thing that they've done for years, and it really doesn't help you. I mean, it really makes those players less confident. And then last night, in the biggest power play of their season, he's running the point. He's the center guy on the point, and he just couldn't handle it. They kept putting the puck back to him, and every puck that he had on his stick was botched. It was mishandled. He was making passes quickly. He just wasn't able to handle that. Maybe Tavares is in that spot if he's healthy, or whoever's Marner's at that center spot. But you can't do what you did to Sandin and then put him in that spot to save your season.
Their other option as a top power play point guy was Riley, who's logging 28 minutes a night and who's been terrible as a point guy in the power play. Sandin, he's not fully developed as a 5-on-5 defenseman, but the one thing that he can do, that he did at the World Juniors, that he did with the Marlies, that he's done at points with the Leafs, is point the power play.
Yeah, but in that power play, Mike, he was in over his head. Like he was. I mean, because if you're running the power play where you have one point guy back there, which is what they do, it can't be a guy that you scratched a game earlier because he made a mistake.
Of the entire cavalcade of things that went wrong with the Maple Leafs in Game 7 yesterday, having Rasmus Sandin point the power play in the third period is about 10th.
I mean, there were other things, like something that I thought was
a big power play, Mike. It was a pretty big power play.
Something power play, but the beginning of the third period that they didn't even get in the zone for the first minute. I mean, blew for the entire series.
Right. There was something that I had also messaged to somebody. I noticed that Nick Suzuki was beating Austin Matthews on offensive zone faceoffs. And I was like, wow, this is great for Suzuki, but a bad look for Austin Matthews too. And those things are important, and those things do add up. And so it wasn't all just about injuries. And I know Matthews has a banged up wrist. I mean, everybody's playing hurt, so we can't use that with everybody. But the Leafs, the problem is when they lost some of their key guys, like Colorado lost Kadri, right? They put Alex Newhook in there. We're like, okay, they're winning without Kadri. You do have to win without these guys too for a period of time. You do.
Yeah, and about being outcoached, what you said earlier, quite early on in the series, Keith actually said, I don't care who they put out against Matthews and Marner because my good guys can play against anyone.
Right.
And for the whole series, he just gave Ducharme the matchup he wanted. And then he couldn't hide Matthews and Marner, and perhaps he should have done it.
And then in games 5 and 7, he started putting out Matthews after offensive zone or after icings, so the matchups couldn't be against Danault, and he tried to shake him loose. And even in that instance, Matthews couldn't score. So I mean, that's what comes back to the inability of the core group to really step up. Whereas guys like Nathan McKinnon for Colorado, game 1. Boston Islanders, who scored a hat trick? David Pasternak. Who scored the 2 goals to tie it in the third period? Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand. Some players come up and come through in clutch times. And so far, through 5 years of playoffs, the guys that you need to. Now, Matthews has had good playoffs before, but this year, especially against a team that they were heavily favored against, he came up short.
Yeah, but by the time Keith made the adjustments and shielded him a little bit, the damage was done. The confidence was hurt. And, if he'd started coaching like that from the start, it might have been a different story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just watching, just watching the way Price they on the CBC they showed Price's reaction to the game-winning goals in Game 5 and 6 when he was in goal, and it was
just
really
like business as usual.
It was as if like they had just ended the morning skate. Like he turns back to his net, picks up the water bottle, puts his head back, drinks the water, and skates back. And then all these players arrive at him like screaming like, "Brah!" Because they had just won the games in 5 and 6.
Yeah, he's saying, "Where can I spend my $10.5 million?"
But Price's reaction, I mean, that kind of calmness was such a stark contrast, and just it was really just telling.
Well, but Campbell's an emotional guy. Like, I appreciated him post game. He was crying because he was like, man, he took it hard, but it's not going to kill his career. It won't. I have no problem
with that. It won't kill his career. I think he's a tough guy. Campbell's been through a lot already. Honestly,
yes.
He has not, he's not like he's been through it. He's had it where it looked like he wasn't going to make it in the NHL, and now here he is in the NHL on a
See, but this is what I appreciate about Jack Campbell. He owned he recognized the importance of that goal, and he said that was the worst goal of his career in Game 7, and that is something that teammates will. But he's covering for his teammates. It wasn't on him. That was the most important goal of that game. But the loss was not just on him.
No, the loss isn't on him. I mean, you didn't score until there was a minute left in the game. It's like it's not the loss isn't on your goalie in that situation at all, right? You can't. But like Kevin said, that was that was a tough one. I mean, that's a tough goal to give up. It reminds me of the famous Claude Lemieux goal against Hextall years ago in the Flyers Devils series. That was just like, it wasn't the reason the Flyers lost that series, but it was just a tough goal to give up at a tough time.
Well, wasn't it the Olympics that Tommy Salo ducked and the puck went in high? Yeah.
On his head.
Leaf Nation thought it was over when Campbell gave up that goal. Like, you could just feel the entire fan base. Not just the nation,
the players as well.
Yes, it was appropriate. Somebody tweeted this last night. It's appropriate that 550 healthcare workers were in the Scotiabank Arena last night because they all know the Heimlich maneuver.
Don't go there.
Well,
what cracked me up about the fact that it was all health workers that they gave the tickets to is that they had 550 tickets to give, and they couldn't even manage to give them just to Leafs fans. They still were Habs fans in there.
There are Habs fans in there.
Habs fans creep into every place, every arena in the league. There are so many that come into Philly just for a regular season game. It's amazing.
They're like termites, Karine, but Kevin has.
Well, I'm just going to add too, and we've talked about this before, but I thought it was really a sharp contrast last night to watch, a game in an American arena where fans are allowed and then no fans. Would that a Game 7 been completely different? Well, the answer is yes, it would have been different.
Yeah, it would have been. But the Canadians, they like to go to other people's building and just ruin the party on Game 7s. Yep. In 2014 in Boston, they won 3-1 as well. And they shut up that crowd.
And here's the thing about that, Kevin. I thought about that too. And I thought, but here's the thing about that. It depends on the kind of energy in the building. And the kind of energy in that building would have been the nervous energy. Like if that building is full, and nervous energy just can feed into more nervous energy. So to me, that
actually, I thought the energy was good. I saw a lot of these home videos for people who worked for the rink or people who were some of the healthcare workers, and everything looked good at the beginning before the game started.
No, people were up. They were upbeat. I mean, they should be upbeat. I mean, that was like,
it was really.
I mean, the first time you're seeing hockey in over a year, big game like that. I mean, it should be upbeat. But if it was just if COVID never existed and we're just in a full up building in that space right there, I think the Leaf fans may have played against them as much as they played for them.
I hearken back to 2013 and the video that somebody shot from one of the Toronto condos of Maple Leaf Square when the Leafs are up 4-1. Everybody's celebrating. The most people left Maple Leaf Square when the score was 4-3 because they knew that Boston was going to tie the game. If there were 19,000 fans in Scotiabank Arena, the result would have been the same because as soon as Gallagher scored that goal, I'll bet you there would have been people that left the building.
Well, we talked about this yesterday during the show, Kevin, that like when Mike was on here, we said, that Leaf fans already think they're going to lose before this game even began.
Yeah.
So you're putting and the assumption was they were not think, but we assume that this is going to go poorly. Was more, which is the defense mechanism against everything that's happened in the past.
And
so
Leaf
when
fans,
that first goal goes in, it's just like, oh well, there it is.
And Leaf fans are going to lose the draft lottery too tomorrow.
They don't have a first.
I know.
Yeah, I know. It's just, I mean, it is fascinating, and I do want to get on for a little bit here. We just have a few minutes left. I think we should talk about Winnipeg Montreal while we have Corinne here. Yeah.
Mike's like,
give
yeah,
Mike
I'll see
a
ya.
chance to move on to soothe his head for a second. You got to check out Mike's blog. You got to check out Mike's blog. Really good stuff. Really, Mike, excellent blog. I mean, honestly, really, just throughout the playoffs, incredible stuff. So, and same with you, Corinne. And just you guys are just stellar, both of you. It's an amazing combination for two amazing teams. So let's move on to Winnipeg and Montreal now. And it's hard. It's like it's. We now know, by the way, that these are the two lowest seeded teams, right, that are going to the next round. That whoever wins this will play Colorado or Vegas, right? Like that's something that we now know, which is interesting.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be easy.
Yeah, right. So whoever wins here, might not what you wish for. Colorado or Vegas is on the horizon, and now we know that that's how this is setting up, which is kind of fascinating that we know that ahead of
Now,
time.
where the game gets played, as far as the North American, the Canadian team, that'll be a whole thing too. Because I don't know if Winnipeg will open up if they win. Montreal will have fans.
I think it will happen. It will open
You think
up.
it'll open
the
up?
border won't be an issue either. They're kind of negotiating about that right now. So
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's going to be fine.
That'll be a great
Did
thing.
Mike
for
just
Canadian fans.
I think he did.
That's not true.
Mike and Elvis have both left the building.
Mike has left the building. That's hilarious.
The one thing I would say about the Winnipeg's status in this round is, if we all remember on Twitter in the middle of the season how many top writers who had kind of stepped in and watched Winnipeg for a while all had the same level of tweets that said, don't sleep on Winnipeg. That
Right.
the team could be really surprised. Like I remember seeing Mark Spector write that way. Got a couple of guys from the Hockey News. There were a lot of guys. I wrote that. There were a lot of people who were really fascinated by the potential because they had the goaltending in Hellebuck, and they can have a really dynamic offense. So this Winnipeg team is a fascinating team. I think
They're a tough team in the playoffs because they're big down the middle. They have a great goalie. They have good puck moving defensemen, and those are a lot of key ingredients you need to win.
Yeah, and
I had them in the playoffs as well because of Hellebuck. Mostly, their defense can be suspect at times, but Hellebuck makes up for that.
They may not be strong defensively. Guys like Morrissey, they can move the puck.
I think the key for them is, we often talk about teams that are more ready for the playoffs than they are the regular season. They have a player, and that's Scheifele. Like Scheifele,
Scheifele's a playoff player.
is built for the playoffs.
Yeah,
like that's his game. And that he's a big difference maker. I think in the postseason series because he's hard to move out of the front of the net, and there's a lot of the wearing down. Like people always talk about, you get hit so often, but wearing down also comes from pushing, trying to move guys out of the way.
I do still think is
he's
suspect.
the guy you got to try to move out of the way.
Right.
So
Mike lost his power in his house. He just texted us.
He did.
From tough to worse, man. Jello household today. All right, so I mean, so how did these teams play against each other in the regular season?
Well, regular seasons was 3 wins, 3 losses, and 3 OT losses for Montreal. But across those 9 games, Price was only in 4 of them.
Only in 4 of them.
Only in 4 of them, and it was in playoffs Price. So
right.
it's worth what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that Montreal in the playoffs is a different animal altogether, especially once they start getting confidence going. We've seen this before. I mean, it was a few years ago when they had that crazy run when Briere was there. 2010
was just insane. That was quite funny, actually, because I still lived in England at that point. So I was watching the game from midnight to 3 a.m. in the morning, and then going to work at 6 in the morning, all the way singing the song Feels Like 93 from the guy from Montreal.
Before that, I want to say a year before that, maybe 2, I did a feature on Halak for NHL.com, and I asked him what the biggest change was from the AHL to the NHL, and he said the food.
Nice. But Alak, he had quite a spring.
But there's a year. The year I'm talking about is it comes after that, which is when you have Tokarski in goal. Remember the crazy that crazy run?
That's 2014,
and that's the run that I thought was.
That wasn't that big of a run. We died in the conference final when Kreider ran Price.
Well, you got to the conference. That team wasn't supposed to go to the conference finals. I mean, that was the Final Four team. I mean, that's kind of Toronto would be happy with that.
I was in a Canadian bar. I just got done covering the Memorial Cup. The Memorial Cup was over, and I'm sitting in a bar watching that Ranger Canadiens game, and Kreider runs into the goalie, and I was just like, oh man, I'm in a bad spot here because I can see this is a key point in the series here, and I can't even moderately look like I'm happy or anything, and I just stayed stoic. I felt bad though.
How funny is it though? How the difference between Canadiens fans and Leaf fans? Corinne is upset about that. That's not much of a run, you know. That 2014, we only went to the conference finals.
Well, because that's previous history.
But if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, that's like, oh, conference finals. That's like nothing, right? I know 2016 Stanley Cups or whatever, but still, like, come on, like that's still, like,
no, but I mean,
like the best season they've had in the last 25 seasons is when they got to the conference finals. I mean, that's when they're.
The thing is, though, 2010 was a better run because they had to dismiss Pittsburgh and Washington. That was the top 2 seeds, and that's why that was a great run. Whereas in 2014, they played against Tampa Bay, and Bishop was the goalie back then, and he was injured. So they had like a backup goalie, so we swept them, but it's just like, and then after that, it was Ottawa. So it wasn't.
Are we going to talk about the other game?
Yes, let's talk about the other game. Let's talk about Buffalo, Boston, the Islanders last night too. Buffalo. I'm losing my mind. Sorry. It's been a week. Boston and the Islanders. Let's talk about that. Again, another. I mean, these teams are playing exciting games too. And then the Islanders. I mean, this is a bizarre because I have no concept who's better. If we end up with like Boston versus Tampa in the next round, like I can't even.
I still think Tampa's slightly better than the other two, but the other two could ratchet up their games to the point where they could beat them too. So it's close.
Yeah. I mean,
because both Boston and the Islanders have the ability to play stifling defense when they roll into that, and they neither have been able to do it against each other, which is really kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
But
there's like a canceling out going on or something.
Who can explain? You remember how painful it was to watch the Islanders try to score a goal in the end of the regular season?
Yeah, that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, and now they look like they got more than enough goals. I mean, Brock Nelson has played really, really well, and the fact that they're here and it's 1-1, and Barzal,
Josh Bailey stepping up. You're right, Barzal's the least, but again, they are trying to shut him down. The interesting thing is, I still look at the Islanders in net and still don't know what they're going to do next because it's not like Varlamov won him that game, and it's not like he lost him that game. And I don't think it's a matter – I tell you right now, either goalie is going to give up 3 goals a game to the Boston Bruins with the offense they have. So it's just like I don't know which is the better goalie. I don't know if they're going to keep rotating them. That's the crazy part. But it could be an advantage because I don't think Boston knows either.
Well, no, they don't.
Here's my thinking on this and why. I mean, I think that Sorokin would be the guy for this series. Obviously, I like Sorokin. I've been about Sorokin all year, but I'm going to go back to 2010 here. Halak wins those first 2 series against the Penguins and the Capitals, and then plays Philly. And I'm at that Flyers series. I'm covering that Flyers series in Philly, and the Flyers say Halak is a smaller goalie, and we're gonna get in his face and make him crazy. That for some reason the Penguins and Caps are so skilled they just didn't crash the net. We're gonna crash the net. And that's what they do. They crash in that, and that they eventually get to Halak, and they win that series. When I see the 2 goalies, Sorokin feels a lot bigger in goal than Varlamov does. Varlamov feels smaller to me in goal. I don't know their size difference. I think Varlamov is smaller.
I don't think he feels smaller. I mean, Sorokin's faster post to post. You saw that on the Coyle goal, but then Varlamov does come up big in big moments. Where I don't know if Sorokin has done that enough yet in all series, in all of his games. So
I've seen. There aren't that many goals. If you look at Sorokin's goals they've been giving up this year, crashing the net has not really worked on Sorokin as much as it does on Varlamov.
I'm sorry, guys. I gotta go. I got something else with
thank you
the
very
day
much.
job. So see you next time. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Bye.
Sorry, Corinne. To answer Joe Morello, I've already said 3 or 4 positive things about the Islanders, but listen to what you want to hear, so it's fine.
I mean, I think that the Bruins are a team that they do crash the net. They are a crash the net team. No two ways about it. Do you agree? I mean, that's they.
Yes,
they
Well, yeah, I mean, they have guys that certainly go hard to the net too. But to what I noted yesterday is that people can complain all they want about Marchand, but boy, when they need him, he's there, and he's he's playing hard, and they can score goals from well out.
That Marchand goal was far away. You're right about that.
These are two old school style NHL teams.
It really is. It's fun.
I like the series. I think could be fun. This could go 7 games, and I don't know how you even explain how poorly the Islanders played down the stretch. And how they looked like the same team.
You can't.
That we saw in last year's playoffs. I mean, this is the way they looked.
Yeah, they just found their game. I mean, it is very much like 2 old school teams, which is what is fascinating about this, because about the divisions being played the way they've been played this year is you really have seen a character in each of these divisions that's different from the other divisions. Like, and this division has its own character too. It's not just these 2 teams. The other teams in this division played this way as well. But and that's where the Central has its own style for sure. The West has its own style for sure. I think that I love this series, and I love to see the way these 2 teams play. This is the kind of hockey I grew up on. This is like Patrick Division hockey to me. This is
and it's exceptional coaching too.
Yes.
I remember covering the Boston Carolina series a couple of years ago, and I remember just writing what a joy it was to listen to both Brendan Moore and Cassidy talk about.
Yeah, you're right about that.
And they're so first of all, they're both honest. They talk about their teams like they're not afraid to say publicly that my team is not playing well, or I think we can be better on this end. But also just their gamesmanship during the game, and I like how they did well. That's how I feel about Trotz versus Cassidy as well. Like, they both pull the levers as well as anyone in the league. So
they really do, and their teams give it up. Their teams give up what they have to give up. They leave it all on the ice. When you watch these games, they're leaving it all on the ice. There's no question about it. There's no. Both these teams are so much physically tougher. Watching back to back, like watching Montreal Toronto and then watching this game last night, because I went to this game after the Montreal Toronto game was over. The difference was striking. Like the physicality and the physical toughness of these teams, and just the old school hockeyness of this series versus that series was remarkable.
I'll tell you the one change, and look, the Islanders did a good job on Pasternak, because anytime he got the puck, they were lifting his stick. So they made it very hard for him to get shots on net, especially in the lane where he likes to go. So they did a good job on that. I think Boston will take Lawson out, and it's just a matter of, are they going to go with Ternorty, or are they going to go with a better skater like Vakanainen? I think that'll be like the decision they make on that. But Lawson's been sort of hurting them on these look, bad pass, bad play. It happens, but he's had it happen a bunch of times. So I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to do to sort of tighten it up. And then the Islanders probably will keep everything the same, except – I don't know. I guess you have to keep the goalie the same, Eck. I don't think you can bring in Sorokin simply because you won the game. So
Trotz, I don't think cares about much as far as goalies go. I think he'll go with whoever he thinks is hot. He does, and he doesn't mind. He obviously is comfortable with both of them. It's obvious to him that's Varlamov is like a Vezina candidate trophy this year, Vezina candidate this year. Varlamov is. Sorokin was a call, could win the Conn Smythe for the for the first round of the playoff. It was just amazing. This thing plays out he can go either way. It doesn't really matter.
It really could go either way.
I think Trotz relies on Mitch Korn, his goaltending coach, too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Advise him. I mean,
very much so.
Korn is considered a quality goaltender coach, and he does a good job there. Yeah, I mean, both teams have the goaltending. Both teams, I mean, Boston's offense is better certainly than the Islanders, but boy, this could be a really fascinating series. I mean, the Islanders, after giving up that tying goal, should have wilted.
Yeah,
but they don't.
No, they don't. They haven't all year. I've seen this before. The Islanders have that old New Jersey Devils thing in them.
Right.
That's just that very much is like, yeah, it doesn't. Like yes.
Actually, Varlamov was not in the Vezina. It's Fleury, Grubauer, and Vasilevsky.
Right. But he could have been. I mean, he really could have been.
He could have been. He had the 7 shutouts. I don't know if we should vote on it because we have Kevin here on who we think should win the Vezina. Should we do that?
Yeah, who do we have? We got Fleury.
Fleury, Vasilevsky, Grubauer. I'll tell you, I'll go first. I think it's Grubauer. I think he had 7 losses this year. He had a 9.22 in the regular season. Now, you don't vote in the playoffs, but voters are watching the playoffs, and he's got a 9.41 in the playoffs. I just think he's had that kind of year where it's really hard for me to vote against him. And all of them were great. They're all great. But I would give it to Grubauer.
Yeah, I'd probably lean to Fleury, I would say, but I'd think about Grubauer. I'd actually have to think about this one. This was a tight vote.
It is a tight vote.
But Fleury, given the circumstances of that, they didn't even want him. And
that to me, Fleury's the guy. I mean, there were, Vasilevsky actually struggled at points during the season, which is kind of surprising. There were points towards the end of the season where he was really not playing well at all. But I think he might be the best goalie, but he was struggling at that point. But what Fleury did this year is just so remarkable. It's just
it is. But again, I think, and I said this on Sirius, I think everybody's opinion of Grubauer is still the guy who got pulled after game 1 and during game 1 with the Washington Capitals, and he is no longer that goalie. He is a lot better than that. He's got a better defense in front of him. He is a better goalie than he was then.
Well, Sakic has been right about Grubauer.
He has, yeah.
Everybody keeps telling him he needs a goalie, and I think people. I don't know that they look specifically toward that game because I don't think people's memories are that good. But I do think they see him still as unproven, and I think he's proved that he can be the number 1 guy in Colorado for sure. So, and that's been part of it. Like right now, it feels, and I just wrote this column and posted it on Hockey Buzz, but it feels like the Avalanche are never going to lose another game.
It does feel that way.
I mean, that's clearly a silly suggestion, but right now they got it all going. I mean, just think about it. They got Nathan McKinnon, who's playing like a true superstar. They get Cale Makar, who he's got 7 points. It feels like he's in on every goal, though.
Yeah, he really does feel that way.
Yeah, and they have this air of invincibility. Like their confidence level is so high. They've outscored the opposition. I think it's like 27-8. Like they've got everything going. And then you look at all the moves that Sakic has made in terms of he brought in Brandon Saad, Devin Taves. They've given Ryan Graves more duties in the postseason, and he's just been terrific.
Think about how Jared Bednar got dumped on in his first year, and where he's been the last 2 years.
Yeah. So it just everything, and Grubauer is again up even at this trade deadline. There were people writing and suggesting in the fan base, oh, they got to get a goalie.
And he's got the highest save percentage of the playoffs, 941.
Right. Yeah.
So for your gamblers out there, Kevin, we talked about this yesterday. We're going to get out of here after I say this because we'll end this with this. But here's a thought. Something I've always tracked very closely: when a team wins by more than 5 goals in the playoff series in a game, they tend to lose the next game 75% of the time. So we're all sitting here saying Colorado's unbeatable. Tonight the hockey thing would be for Vegas to win tonight.
Well, and they're playing a good team too. I mean, they're 5-0.
It's not like they're top liver, so
yeah.
So
this would be this. I mean, that doesn't mean Vegas is going to win the series. It just means that game right after you get blown out in the playoff series tends to go the opposite direction 75% of the time.
When you were right about the Leafs last night, Eck, I'll say that
Colorado was the favorite in September, and they're favorite now. But in September they were plus 800, and I think they're like plus 112 now, like almost even. So
the Canadiens odds went down to like plus 1,300 now. I got an email on it.
Here's what's totally bizarre. The Carolina Hurricanes. Now I'm not a bettor, but I've been writing.
Right. Yeah.
But there's the Carolina Hurricanes are still at plus 1,300.
Yeah.
Which is really remarkable to me. So
is that just because no one is betting them?
I think that has something to do with it. They're not a team with like there's a factor to betting that you have to factor in. That there's always going to be a lot of betting on the Yankees.
Yeah.
The Vegas teams always get a lot of betting.
Right.
So like so like the Las Vegas could have lost a lot of money had the Vegas won the Stanley Cup because there was an inordinate amount of betting on that.
I wonder if Carolina goes down 0-2 if that starts to change though.
So yeah, we'll see.
Really, really interesting. All right, guys, thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us. Thanks for Mike and Corinne who had to drop off, but we'll be back again tomorrow. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just hockey, and I have to end the show because Mike's not here. So.